A 50-year-old widow with zero saved for retirement recently called into the Dave Ramsey show and wanted to get his advice on how to start investing. She takes home about $3,000 per month, has $1,000 in her emergency fund, and wants to retire at age 65. Here's what Dave Ramsey recommended.
You bring home $3,000 a month. You do not have any bills except survival bills. You have no debt, no rent, no nothing, okay?
Correct.
If you were to invest $1,000 a month for 15 years, at 65, you're going to have right around $500,000, right around $500,000.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. What this means is not that you're rich, and it's really not enough, but it's enough to make sure you're not cold and hungry.
Right.
Because it will produce then, let's just reverse engineer this, which is very interesting. Okay, let's pretend it produced 10% a year on the mutual funds after that, and that you retired and had no retirement income. And I suspect you probably have a retirement with your government agency, don't you? That they furnish you? A pension?
Yeah, actually, my husband, I get a pension off of him, but that's in...
Yeah, but do you get a pension from your work when you retire?
No.
Huh. Okay.
It's just Social Security I pay into.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is horrible, but that's okay. All right. So if you had $500,000 at 65 or 67 or whatever, and it was invested at 10%, 10% of 500,000 is 50,000 a year.
Right.
Without touching the nest egg, without touching the goose, it will lay 50,000 golden eggs a year.
Wow.
And so you'd actually be making more at retirement than you are now.
Okay, so Ramsey's recommending that she invest $1,000 every month between now and when she retires at age 65. If she does so, Ramsey predicts she will have accumulated $500,000 by the time she reaches age 65. For those of you who are keeping score at home, that comes out to annualized returns of 12% per year. When she reaches age 65, for reasons known only to Ramsey himself, that portfolio will stop producing 12% per year and will then begin producing 10% per year. Then, because she's earning a consistent solid 10% per year, she now has a permission slip to take 10% annual distributions for the rest of her life. That turns out to be $50,000 per year over a roughly 30-year retirement. So, problem solved, folks. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Let's tackle the first problem with what Ramsey is recommending here. He says that this widow will likely earn 12% per year over the next 15 years. Generally, it's safe to show future returns based on a historical track record consistent with your future investment horizon. For example, if you want to know what rate of return you're likely to experience over the next 15 years in, say, the S&P 500, then see what that same index did over the last 15 years. This widow had begun investing in the S&P 500 on or around 2007. She would have experienced an annual return of 9.24% per year over that time frame. So Ramsey is quite aggressive in postulating a 12% return over the next 15 years. Why is this a problem? Well, because this widow is going to walk away from this phone call fully believing that if she invests $1,000 per month over the next 15 years, she'll have $500,000 at age 65. The truth is, if her money only grows at 9.24%, she'll have much closer to $386,000. If she absolutely needed $500,000 by age 65 and could only get 9.24% over that time frame, she'd have to invest much closer to $1,300 a month to pull that off. So Dave Ramsey isn't doing her any favors by giving her these exalted investment returns. Next, Ramsey is suggesting that she take a sky-high stratospheric 10% withdrawal rate on that $500,000 by the time she reaches age 65. She'll be able to withdraw $50,000 of income every year in retirement and never risk running out of money prior to her actuarial life expectancy. So here's where we see one of the gaping holes in Dave Ramsey's investment worldview. He seems to have very little, if any, understanding of what is known as sequence of return risk. Sequence of return risk relates to the order in which you experience investment returns in retirement. In fact, my best-selling book, Tax-Free Income for Life, I actually showed a chart in which a fictional investor with $1 million began taking 10% distributions starting in the year 2000. As you can see from this chart, he runs out of money after only 8 years. To me, it's interesting that Ramsey is recommending 10% withdrawal rates after getting so much flack from the mainstream financial planning community for recommending his listeners take only 8% distributions in retirement. This advice was so egregiously bad that he had a well-publicized kerfuffle with a group of CFPs back in 2014. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Wade Pfau out of Princeton, one of the leading experts in the world on sustainable retirement distributions and retirement, chimed in. He wrote 2 separate articles criticizing Ramsey's exalted 8% distribution rate. So now it appears as if Ramsey has graduated from an 8% distribution rate to a 10% distribution rate. So what are the practical implications for what he's recommending to America? Isn't it all much ado about nothing? Who cares if Ramsey is overly optimistic in his prognostications? Well, as I mentioned earlier, by inflating all of his assumptions, he's giving his listeners an overly optimistic view of how much money they'll have to save to reach their retirement goals. If this widow, for example, were to subscribe to the mainstream financial planning community's gold standard for sustainable withdrawal rates in retirement, she would only take 4% per year, adjusted every year thereafter for inflation. So if she only had $386,000 at age 65 and she constrained herself to a much more sustainable 4% distribution rate, she'd only be able to spend $15,440 per year, not $50,000. Can you begin to see how Ramsey's overinflated retirement variables are setting his listeners up for failure? Furthermore, let's say she reaches retirement with a nest egg of $386,000 and begins taking 10% withdrawal rates. How long would her money likely last? According to Wade Pfau, she'd only have a 58% chance that money would last through 15 years. If she wanted to live a full 30-year retirement, she would make it safely to the end only 11% of the time. That means this poor widow has a 1 in 9 chance of succeeding in retirement by following Dave Ramsey's advice. All this begs the question, why does Ramsey have such an adversarial relationship with math? Why does he seem to ignore the reams of academic data that undermine his core retirement planning assumptions? A couple reasons. First, he likes to paint himself as the retirement planning outsider who is at war with the stuffy, stodgy, mainstream financial planning community. He believes this outside-the-box, math-be-darned approach to retirement planning will endear himself to his listeners and help build his following. Next, Ramsey believes that if he can show these fantastical retirement projections, that he's more likely to convince money-challenged, debt-laden Americans to get off of square one and begin taking steps towards financial independence. I mean, let's face it, saving $1,000 per month for 15 years and only being able to withdraw $15,000 per year just isn't all that sexy. In short, don't be seduced by Ramsey's inflated rates of return or his massive withdrawal rate assumptions. You're much better off using a 9% or so rate of return and a 4% sustainable distribution rate in retirement. This will give you a much more realistic picture of what you'll need to save on a monthly basis and what you'll likely be able to spend in retirement. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to davidmcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to powerzero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.